on today's episode of the show, we are breaking down Pat Kelsey's press conference from last week, analyzing the comments that he made about dealing with NIL, updates on the roster, what to expect from the team on the court, and more. That said, let's get right on into the show.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everyone? Happy Saturday. Welcome in to this off-season episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. As always, I want to personally thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the Locked On Louisville podcast, free and available on all streaming services, 5 days a week. Your team, every day. Pat Kelsey spoke to the media this past week and once again showed that he just gets it. We'll break down what he said last week. We'll start out in the first segment by shifting towards more basketball talk on the court. And then in the second segment, we will dive into some of the comments made about NIL, the Bahamas trip, having Peyton Siva on staff, tattoos, and more. And then at the conclusion of the show, we discussed two new football commitments for Jeff Brom's program in the Flyville 25 high school class. So a lot of great stuff to talk about on the docket to discuss today. But once again, Pat Kelsey and various players met with the media last week to discuss a multitude of things. And Kelsey once again showed that he just gets it, man. Ever since he took this job at Louisville, it has been a consistent cycle of me thinking to myself, man, this guy just gets it. Like, I'm so glad that this guy is here in this position because he understands what is being expected of him. I was interested to hear what he had to say, and I was refreshed by, it was refreshing to hear, what he said about the team on the court. We're going to break this segment down into basically three parts: culture, patience, and what to expect. For starters, he mentioned this term that he has stated multiple times. It is relentless effort, competitive excellence, and power of the unit. And subliminally, he kept going back to this term to answer questions, because I think one of the sole foundations of this program is to develop the culture that he wants to see. When Pat Kelsey was hired, we were told immediately by College of Charleston fans that he makes it to where it's unapologetically about your team. Unapologetically College of Charleston. Now it's unapologetically University of Louisville Cardinals, and that's great to hear. He kept reiterating the importance and emphasizing the priority of making culture an everyday affair. Now, granted, you could argue that to have a great culture, there has to be an emphasis on building that up every day. I remember an interview that I had with Dan McDonald a couple of years ago for Cardinal Sports Zone, and I sort of asked him, what would you sort of define as your culture, and how does that, get to where you want it to be? And he flat out said it's an everyday thing. It's not something that you can sort of take days off with. Culture is a foundation that you build upon every single day. And it just reminded me of that because Pat Kelsey was adamant that we don't take days off. Every single day we look to get better. Now, that might seem cliche to hear about, but this is a program that has been yearning for a cultural identity on and off the court for a couple of years now. And now that we have a coach that has come in and has clearly defined what he wants that to be: relentless effort, competitive excellence, power of the unit, I think that is refreshing to hear. And he also mentioned that having guys from the College of Charleston following him to Louisville, Kobe Rogers, Rain Smith, James Scott, it helps out because not only does it assist new players on learning terminology and stuff, but it also helps them to get to know Pat off the court as well. And I thought that was pretty interesting. When it comes to the roster construction, I thought some of the comments that he made sort of maybe raised my eyebrow. He made it very clear. He said nobody in the locker room was promised anything. Playing time is about your ability to compete. Some would brush that off and say, yeah, okay. To get guys to come to your place of basketball, wow, I said that weird. To get guys to come to play for your team is a lot better way to say it. Don't know why I didn't say it in the first place. You have to promise some starting minutes or a good amount of playing time. Kelsey said no, that wasn't the case. It's all about competing. And we went for guys that we believed could fit this culture and fill what this team needs. And that makes a little bit of sense because you think of the handful of recruitments that we heard that Louisville, quote unquote, turned down in the name of not affecting the culture. And I think people wondered what that meant. Well, it meant that you're not going to promise starting time. You're not going to promise, an ample amount of playing time if that competitiveness isn't there. He also said that, without saying it, that we need to be patient. There are a lot of questions about, well, who's standing out? What's the status of the team? And Pat Kelsey sounds like a broken record. He was like, look, it's way too early. It's June. We have 13 new guys on this team. Even without having 13 new guys, it's still a work of progress. He said that these guys have, bonded off the court or on and off the court. They have shown the competitive fire. They have meshed well, but it's still early. He didn't point out anyone individually when those questions were asked. When he asked who the starting five was going to be, he said that starting five probably won't be determined until right before the first game. Even the starting fives in the Bahamas trip will be an indication of who's looked the best in practice. It is a work in progress. The verdict is still out, but it's a process with a daily focus. Now, they went about going out and getting guys that, filled what Pat Kelsey was looking for. He mentioned that winning at your previous destination plays a role, but context is key. And it's just about a matter of fitting what they're looking for on and off the court. He acknowledged that they brought in an older group of veterans with previous success that lead in different ways. Javon Hadley is more of a vocal guy, and even sort of the younger players. James Scott, Kanai Roots, younger, but they still handle their business in a professional way. Up until this point, he acknowledged that the off-season workouts have been about technique, it's small group focus, and starting the foundation of developing the system with this group. That, like I said, there's not many takeaways. And I think that that's one thing that this fan base needs to understand is that eventually this team, in my opinion, is going to be very good. The key word there being eventually. It's going to take some time for this team to get to where they need to be. Pat Kelsey said every team is different. You never know when this team is going to click. He admitted that he didn't think it was going to be before or even right after the Bahamas trip, but once it clicks, he thinks that things are going to be very, very solid. So there's patience needed, but that doesn't take away from the expectations that you have for the group. Rome wasn't built in a day. As cliche as that is, it's the truth. And I'm glad that Pat mentioned that right away. It's like, yeah, June has been all about practicing, getting used to playing with one another, and sort of just getting better daily. And it's not about this team's ready to win a national championship tomorrow. The third part of this segment, what to expect from the team on the court, I thought that was the very interesting part of this. He mentioned that the toughest thing for the team at the moment is just getting the terminology down. 13 new players. It's pretty challenging to get that terminology down, but that everyone will have an opportunity and that it's all going to be based upon effort. We know about the offense. He made a comment that this team loves great basketball talk. There is a huge focus on analytics, X's and O's, which if you've watched Louisville in the past couple of years, you're thinking to yourself, thank goodness, because it feels like analytics just has not been a part of this program for the past couple of seasons. He identified this term, beauties in the randomness, when it comes to this offense that's going to play very fast. One of the fastest offenses in the country. It's about knowing your role, executing. There's going to be a method to the madness, but I'm interested to hear how he's going to expand on the whole beauties in the randomness term, which basically means that Louisville's going to be unpredictable on the offensive end. Main thing you should take away from this segment is what I'm about to say. There's been a lot of misconception about playing fast. Defensively, he said 99% of the defense will be half-court man-to-man. Compared his team to Alabama, playing fast on offense, but they don't really press. They just play really hard-nosed defense man-to-man. There's a focus on rebounding and rim protection and switching and being versatile, but it's man-to-man in the half-court. There's a lot of half-court focus. And I would venture into saying that if you're playing that fast on offense, it's almost impossible to be able to press at a high level too. So if you're taking one thing away, this is not going to be a huge pressing defensive team. 99% half-court man-to-man defense. Obviously, some context might not necessarily allow that, but that is going to be the focus. Pretty interesting comments that Pat Kelsey made, but he also made some comments about non-on-the-court things in nature, such as how he's dealing with NIL, the Bahamas trip, Peyton Siva, whether or not this job is too much from a social standpoint, and even tattoos. We'll break down what he said in that regard coming up on the next segment of the show after we tell you about our friends over at eBay Motors. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you always find exactly what you're looking for, and with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or you get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fits only available to U.S. customers. Cardinal fans, once again, you need to make Locked On Sports Today a daily avenue of sports talk. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. Into the second segment of this Saturday off-season episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast, we're continuing to break down Pat Kelsey's press conference from the conclusion of last week. He just gets it. He made some comments on the court that I think a lot of people resonated with. But some of the things that he said about off-the-court things, well, Bahamas trip wasn't really off the court, but how he mentions it might be able to be interpreted as that. He made some comments on various things that I think people will appreciate. We started with that Bahamas trip, and we broke down the opportunity for Louisville to go to this Bahamas trip. It's the first foreign international trip that this team will have taken since the summer of 2015 under Rick Pitino. Opponents to be determined. They're making that trip in late July. The two things that he mentioned as being the focal points and the real advantages to this are practices, getting the extended practice time because you only get like 4 hours of basketball activity a week in the summer. Getting that extended amount of practice time is key. And also team building, bonding, camaraderie, being in a foreign country and getting those cultural experiences. It's something that helps with bonding on and off the court. That's what matters. I'm sorry, I just coughed up a lung mid-sentence and it made my eyes water. But nonetheless, the advantages of this trip are surrounding just more time to get together and bond and build that camaraderie on and off the court. Continuing on with the basketball side of things, he mentioned Peyton Siva being a huge asset to this program. Peyton Siva makes any organization better, according to Pat Kelsey. And it's advantageous from an alumni standpoint, but national champion, hard worker, very passionate. He said it in a recent interview. We talked with Peyton Siva on this show about the relationship with Pat Kelsey, and it's very clear that Pat Kelsey reciprocates that appreciation for the former Louisville Cardinal great point guard. This was very interesting because there was a question asked about how you handle NIL in the locker room. We've seen it all across college sports be able to create distractions. Pat Kelsey's answer, I thought, was impressive, an indication of the culture, and sort of relieving. He said that you can't, but without saying it, he basically said that you can't run away from NIL. If you neglect NIL, you're going to get run over with the sign of the times. You have to embrace it, but it's all about how you handle it. And in his program, it's about maturity and professionalism and that culture and caring about each other. And he made the analogy of, in a work environment, you might look into a couple different offices, and those people might make a ton of different varieties of salaries, hourly wages, you name it. It's a matter of being mature about it and being professionals, that almost, without saying it, but treating it like a professional team and knowing your role and competing and doing everything that you can to leave your mark on this team and, buying into the power of the unit. That's why culture matters so much, especially in today's realm, because NIL can tear down your program if you let it because of jealousy, distractions, guys not playing for the team, players getting paid, and they immediately stop putting in a ton of effort. You can embrace NIL while also allowing your culture to keep your program on the right track. And I think that Pat Kelsey pretty much alluded to that. A couple more things that he mentioned. Tim Sullivan asked whether or not that this job was, spreading him too thin. He's been on a lot of media opportunities. He has been on many shows. Pat Kelsey immediately praised his support staff, his coaching staff. He mentioned over and over again how great his coaching staff is. He also gave a shout out to the support staff within the athletic department, mentioning Lottie Stockwell and Rocco Gasparo as two people. And let me just tell you, as a PA announcer of the university, the support staff behind the scenes, it's state of the art. It's fantastic. He mentioned Lottie Stockwell and Rocco Gasparo. They are fantastic individuals who pour their heart and soul into this program or to this athletics department. There are so many people, from marketing to sports information, you name it, support staff, you could go on and on here. Game day operations. I've had the pleasure of getting to work with some people at Louisville when I announce these games, and they make my job a lot easier. And I know that there is a ton of passion and care for how they help their coaches. And those people over there deserve so much more credit than they get. You also mentioned tattoos. Tim Sullivan asked about tattoos in the context of Pat Kelsey told his College of Charleston team a couple years ago, if they make the Sweet 16, he is getting a sleeve. And a lot of people wonder, Is he going to do that for Louisville? It seems like that is going to be the case. Maybe not Sweet 16. Maybe it's a little bit a higher of a level that you have to achieve. But Pat Kelsey, the hope is that he is covered on his arms, on his legs with tattoos, because that would be an indication that Louisville has been very successful under Pat Kelsey. But it was a fun press conference. It's always fun to hear Pat Kelsey talk, man. He is, number one, a great speaker, very articulate in the way that he gets his point across. He is a very passionate individual, that just one of those guys you could listen, talk to for a lot of time. But we're going to switch over to football. The good news is not done with. 2 new commitments for Jeff Brom, the 2025 recruiting class. Tyrone, Burrus Jr., Eric Hazzard. We'll break down what they bring to the program here coming up shortly after we tell you about our friends and the title sponsor of the show, FanDuel. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by FanDuel. I already told you, I love sports. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But as the NBA Finals, the Stanley Cup is over, we're getting fewer games. The sports aren't sporting like I want them to, but FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day all summer long. When you head to FanDuel.com, you can look at all of the MLB odds and the boosts. I am a huge soccer bettor, so the Copa America, 2024 Euros, you name it. Head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. We're heading into the final segment of this Saturday off-season episode of Locked On Louisville. The final episode of June will air likely either later tonight or tomorrow. I'd venture into tomorrow. It just feels weird going from 19 monthly episodes from August to May and then immediately going down to 12. June is the first of 2 off-season months. There will be 12 more episodes in the month of July. More football-based because we are getting closer and closer into the season. So just be on the lookout for that. I appreciate everyone for making Locked On Louisville your first listen of the day. But speaking of football, recruiting has been fairly busy. Brian Smith, Locked On Podcast Network National Recruiting Analyst, mentioned that these are like the most important 2 to 3 weeks in high school recruiting because it's so busy. Cardinals have gotten a plethora of commitments. The 2 that they got most recently will help the defensive line. Both are edge rushers, whether they are playing as the Leo outside linebacker position or traditional defensive end, to be determined. But Tyrone Burrus, at the moment, looking at it, according to 24/7 Sports, is the highest commit that Louisville has to date. He's ranked as the 657th best player in the country, according to 24/7 Sports. Now, this is the composite, actually. Now, different services have different players ranked at different spots, but Burrus is a very impressive recruit. 6'4", 225 pounds. Yes, he will need to add some weight as he gets into the collegiate program, but he comes from a very good program in Indianapolis. Warren Central, very solid program. Burrus chose the Cardinals over mainly Big Ten opposition, Indiana and Purdue being the top opposition. He has some other defensive offers, Big Ten offers, Illinois, Iowa State's Big 12, but you get the gist here. Michigan State, Minnesota, the list goes on. A lot of Midwest offers in his sheet. Burrus is an interesting one to me because I think that he has the potential to be a multiple-year contributor. Alan True, national recruiting analyst at 24/7 Sports, evaluated him yesterday. And he had this to say: have to like his productivity and early varsity experience at a good high school program, which plays very good competition week to week. Athletic background, which includes running track, is a good marker of his physical ability. shows quickness off the snap and agility, changes directions and plays and runs plays down. Disciplined and does a good job of maintaining responsibilities. Even with his current quickness, we still see room for him to add explosiveness and pure foot speed as he develops. 225 pounds now. He will need to add weight while maintaining and adding to that speed. Projects as an edge, but has the body type to add weight and potential move around a little if needed. I think he's more of a Leo outside linebacker spot. Personally, for me, this is going to be one of the players in the class that could play early. He is that good, and I think he is, at the moment, probably one of my top 2 favorite commits in the class. Currently, I think Burrus is a fantastic prospect to add to this class, and I think he is going to rise into 4-star level play coming up here in the next couple of months. The other commitment that Louisville got was Eric Hazzard, plays at Fred J. Page High School in Franklin, Tennessee, which is close to the border between Kentucky and Tennessee, sort of in between like Bowling Green and Nashville, probably closer to the former. But he's fairly low ranked, 1307 in the country, according to 24/7 Sports Composite, 3-star level guy, 6'3", 250 pounds. I think he right now is a defensive end, but could maybe be in that Leo role, but could end up being a rotational piece on the edge. Doesn't have a ton of big-time offers. Memphis was the largest competition for Hazzard in this recruitment. That was his only other – actually, Memphis isn't even a Power 5 offer. Louisville was his only Power 5 offer at the moment. Explosiveness is there. I wonder about his ability to defend the run and what his technique is at the next level. Those are some questions that I have moving forward as to how those are going to develop. One trend that we're seeing that we're going to continue to see with how highly Louisville prioritizes the transfer portal is that they're going to take more swings on developmental pieces that they buy into the skill set with, versus getting guys that are going to contribute right away. Now, you want your cake, you want to have your cake and eat it too. You'd like to be able to address the portal the way you do and also get guys that can come in as freshmen and compete for playing time. The NIL budget might not necessarily be there for all of that, but I think that you're going to see Louisville, Jeff Brom, recruit players that he feels has the skill set that can help this team in the future, that he can develop. And then in a couple of years, they can give you some solid snaps. That is the hope for a guy like Eric Hazzard, is that he can be a developmental piece that you can play here, year 3 or so, maybe sometime in year 2, maybe on special teams, depending on who you bring into the program. But 2 solid additions for the Cardinals. Very interested to see how Louisville continues to address this class moving forward. You're probably getting to the end of additions in this class due to the overall numbers of it, but we'll see how Louisville plans to attack the rest of the class moving forward. That is going to wrap up this Saturday edition of the show. Everyone have a great day. We'll see you right back here coming up very soon.